a lot of stress and a lot of not really understanding what's going on. And I think that that's the hardest part for a lot of people with any diagnosis is when they don't have maybe a name to what's going on, where they're not able to feel that they're a part of just a diagnosis. Not understanding what's going on with your body in general is confusing, but then not having a clear diagnosis, I think, makes it harder for people
Oh,
too. And
definitely. Yes. I mean, the people that I've connected with who have this or even have just mast cell activation syndrome said the same thing, that they felt like everything fell back on them like I did. And a lot of times nobody believed them that something was wrong.
yeah, and I think that, because the symptoms of mast cell disease vary so much and there can be overlap of so many different conditions and diseases that can present in similar ways, it can be very confusing. I think 2004, I would have to look at the history of, mast cell disease and where we were in our medical knowledge of mast cell disease. But I think the cool and sometimes the not so cool thing about medicine is that we're constantly learning. So we're literally constantly figuring out new things about different conditions and conditions that we know a lot about. We're learning more about those, and conditions that we've never even understood were there, we encounter. So we discover new conditions or have names to put to conditions that we thought were different things. So, we're constantly evolving in our knowledge. And then, as we talked about in our first episode, even in 2008, the WHO created categories of all of these mastocytosis conditions and gave them separate names and differentiated them because essentially their symptoms, the way that they were diagnosed, and the way that they're going to be treated are so different that we needed to have different names in order to then accurately be able to get that patient's journey to be smoother, right? And so I think that that's a big part of medicine, is being able to help patients figure out exactly what condition they have so that we can then work with them to figure out how to make them feel better. Again, your journey started even before all of these conditions were categorized. So I think that could have been part of why it took you so long to get diagnosed. But in general, mast cell diseases do have a history of the patient going to multiple doctors, seeing multiple specialists before they're actually diagnosed with the condition.
Before we did the bone marrow biopsy, she also wanted to rule out, she did Lyme testing because the symptoms can mimic Lyme disease. Then come back with that, we did celiac. There was a special 24-hour urine collection that we did numerous times that they had to send up to the Mayo Clinic. And that came back showing something was going on with me. So there was also other numerous tests that we did on top of the bone marrow biopsy to get that final confirmation for me that, hey, this is truly what you have.
I think our journey as doctors, patients, people is so different in everything that we do, but also in medical conditions where we are able to just get so much more information so quickly on our own. And obviously, as a physician, I know that that can have pros and cons because I think that it can lead to a lot of people worrying about things that they might not have when they really should be totally. I think it's absolutely okay to be Googling your symptoms and trying to figure out maybe what's going on if you've been through a journey that's difficult, or even in the beginnings of trying to assess what you may have, just to get some more information. But I think that we've talked about this multiple times on our podcast. We have to take that information with a grain of salt. And then the next step is to discuss it with somebody that has more knowledge about all of these different conditions and how everything might fit together in the journey that you're truly experiencing. Because I think it's just such an important point just to remember that Google exists and it's awesome, but that we also have to be really careful because it can sometimes lead us down a path that can be really scary for certain people and can lead to a lot of anxiety. And as we talked about, stress, anxiety can be really hard for people and can make things even worse. And so we want to limit the amount of stress and anxiety that we're causing our bodies. This is one of those things that can sometimes lead people down a rabbit hole that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, with that being said, it would be really interesting to hear, Tammie. So if you had access to Google 10 years ago, how do you feel like your journey would be different? But also, what would you say to people who are kind of in the place you were 10 or maybe 12 years ago, who now have access to Google? What would you kind of tell them? How would you guide them through their questions, concerns before they get their diagnosis?
I get a lot of questions on this from people on TikTok, honestly. Can I take your video in? Hey, you would look just like I do. Can I take this in? And I always tell them, make sure that what you do, make sure you talk to your doctor, because you can't treat this on your own, no matter how hard you try. I mean, I know I have over-the-counter medicines and antihistamines and things like that. They may help reside some of it a little bit, but it's not going to make it go away. So you definitely, if you Google something, or because I'm one that tells patients, advocate for yourself, research for yourself, make sure that you are on a team with your doctor, because sometimes you may come across something that they're not aware of. So take that to your doctor and look at it as a team approach from the very beginning. So if you do Google something and you come across mast cell activation disorder and you look it up and you see pictures and you see all of the symptoms, I would say print it out and make an appointment with your doctor and have a conversation with them, because that initial conversation is very important. They may not, the first time you have that conversation, do anything with it, but it'll be there. And you can continue. Hey, did you think about this? I have some more information for you, because I found, even in my journey, that a lot of the doctors that I've come in contact with know nothing about it. Absolutely. Still to this day, know nothing about it. I've actually had physicians, when I've gone in, tell me that my case is above their knowledge grade and they don't want to take on the liability. So, and I do know that some other people have had the same experience that I've had in that. It's been a common theme that I've heard from other patients who have it, that they're having problems finding a physician that, one, knows about it, and two, wants to take on someone because they don't know about it, which I appreciate. I mean, and I've even said that to individuals. I appreciate someone that says to me, hey, I don't think I have the knowledge to be able to treat you. Let's try to find somebody else that can. So I appreciate that, because again, you have to have someone that feels comfortable with you as a patient too. And you have to feel comfortable with them as a physician. So I guess in the end, I would tell them, if you're Googling something, team approach, always going to as a team approach, because it's going to, all the way through the journey, you're going to be a team with this. So definitely that's how you have to see it and go about it.
Thank you, Tammie. I loved all of everything that you just said. I think that, what we do need to remember, and I tell my patients this, is that doctors are also human, and we really are trying our best. There's different conditions that different doctors really enjoy treating and take a special interest in. I think that we have to acknowledge and respect that. So I really love the fact that, you're saying that it's not something that you have to look at that doctor and say, oh, well, how can you be a doctor, and how can you continue to practice if you don't know something? Because the bottom line is that, again, we're continually learning in medicine. I think this message is more for doctors. Knowing your comfort level is very important, and being able to acknowledge the fact that this isn't really something that you feel comfortable treating is it's a big deal for doctors to do that, to be honest with you. I think most doctors, most humans don't like to acknowledge that maybe they don't have the know-all to treat something, or they feel uncomfortable with a condition that maybe should be in their wheelhouse. But again, mast cell disease, because it can present in so many different ways, and also it are just different conditions, there are different specialists that need to be involved depending on the severity of the condition. And so I really just appreciate everything that you said. And I think that really needs to be highlighted, not only in this conversation, but for many conversations around patient journey and how to navigate that. It's okay to Google, but you want to take that Google to the next level and talk about it with somebody so that you're not just sitting there with all of this information and not able to process it with somebody else to figure out what the next steps could be and figuring out if this truly is something that you're dealing with or not, and just how to move forward with that information.
Quality of life goes day to day. I think that that's an important thing to highlight for people who have this, because you never know one day from the next how bad things can get. I say this is my new normal. I just live, you have to live day to day for quality of life. Has mine decreased? Absolutely. You know, I was in medical school. I planned on being a neurosurgeon. Well, that didn't happen because of this disease. So what I ended up doing, I use it and I try to help advocate and educate for it. So you can change, you just have a new normal with this. The medications, depending upon how much they go, the different side effects can cause issues as well. Some make you sleepy, some make you nauseous, some make you have gastric issues. And so trying to maneuver those can be hard, especially if you're working. So I think quality of life is, you just have to take it day by day and understand that normal is subjective and this is your new normal. And every day, it's for me personally, is a learning experience, because I never know, like I may wake up with some new symptom and I'm like, okay, so we got something new today. You just kind of, and I think that a lot of times it's easy to get bogged down in symptoms, and people with a chronic illness can feel blue and have depressive episodes. And it's those are sometimes hard to maneuver, but I think remember that you'll get through it. The next day may not be the same, and the day after that may not be the same. And you may end up having more good days than bad days. So, I mean, that's what I would say about quality of life. It really depends on what type you have, the severity of it, what medications they have you on. Sometimes your mental outlook as well can play into that. So it's subjective, but for me, it's my new normal. My friends, to separate the disease from myself, we call it Linda. So that I have the disease, she doesn't have me. So all of my friends will call her, how's Linda doing today? So we just to separate it from myself to help me deal with it, with the quality of life thing. And yeah, we just, it came from that little skit with listen, Linda, listen. Well, she doesn't listen.
So cute. I really love that. You're kind of disassociating that condition and knowing that it's almost like how different people can affect us on different days. So I really love that. I've never really heard that analogy for chronic condition, but it really makes sense, because you can't really know how a human being, right? Like when you're in a marriage, like how your partner is going to affect you that day, how your best friend might say something that might totally throw your whole day off or might make your day really great, So I really love that analogy. I think it's beautiful. I think it really adds that element of, this isn't the only thing that I am. This is something that's affecting me. And just like somebody can affect you and your mood on a given day, but that doesn't mean that's who you are. And then, going into that, how have you kind of navigated this? I think number one, I want to start with work.
I would just say, be honest. This disease a few years back disabled me. So I've been disabled, but I've still been able to find other opportunities that are out there. So even though you may not be able to have a traditional type of employment, there are other work. There's work from home opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity, I guess, just out there that you could find to continue if that's something that you have to do for insurance purposes or financial purposes. It's hard to maneuver that because you feel like, or at least I felt like I was not a normal person. I couldn't do the things that my coworkers could do. There were days that I would go in and I didn't look the same, or I didn't feel good. And, even now outside of work, there's still things that you look at, people who quote unquote normal, and you're not those people. And it's hard. It's very, very hard sometimes dealing with a chronic illness to see normal when you're not normal. And I think you have to go back to, well, that's your normal, but that's not my normal. I have a new normal. And in that, it even falls into working. Like I said, I've been blessed all the way. I say that I've been blessed all the way through my journey with this, because I've had very supportive friends and family, and my bosses have been fantastic. But I've also been in a medical facilities where they tend to be more understanding when people have things than not. Then even though I've had doctors who didn't understand the disease, and I've been lucky enough to find some doctors that are willing to see this as a team effort and work with me and do the research and try to find alternatives when things aren't working. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you absolutely did. And I think the key message is being open and honest with your family, friends, workplace. And like you said, that is a privilege. Not everyone can do that and feel job security. Some people would be nervous that could lead to them not getting that raise, or that getting the next opportunity, or whatever it is. And that fear can sometimes lead people to not be as open with their journeys and what they're going through. That's definitely something that I want to acknowledge. And I really think that it is important to be as open and honest as possible, especially with your friends and family, where, that support is so important in any chronic condition. The support of people around you for those bad days when Linda is not being nice to you. You need to be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm not having a good day, and how can you better manage that?
We also have this thing that we implemented where we all get 5 minutes, and we'll call each other and say, I need my 5 minutes. And they'll go, okay, get your coffee and sit down. And then those 5 minutes, you get to feel sorry for yourself. You get to cry. You get to ask for anything that you need and or want. And then after that 5 minutes, or they'll ask again, or we all ask each other, do you need another 5? So I think that first of all, it's important to identify the people you would feel safe enough to go to and say, hey, I'm struggling. Could you, or would you, for me?
Having that form of communication with people that care about you, that are there for you, is so important, to be able to give space to everyone, to kind of acknowledge that we're, again, all humans, and that, we all need that space to talk about what's going on. And I think with a chronic medical condition, that's even more important, to have those people that you're able to have those 5 minutes with, to give that space to yourself, to say that this is just not fun. It's not fun dealing with Linda. It's not fun having that entity or person-like figure in your life that you can't get rid of, right? You can't just get rid of certain chronic conditions. And that's, with mast cell disease, there is no cure. So it is a part of your life and your journey. I really love that message.
I just have to go back and just say that, first, I love that you have a team and that you consider everyone on your team, including your doctor. I think that's very hard sometimes for patients, because as much as we like our doctors, sometimes we find them problematic. They're the ones who always give us the bad news. And I also have to say, that you have this 5 minutes to be heard, but then you give yourself 5 minutes, and that you kind of just that's my time. And then I know I just have to move on to my new normal, and that you have Linda and yourself, so that you don't only identify with your chronic condition, because I think it's very easy when it's something that you're constantly being confronted with to just feel like that is who you are. That's all you've got. That's all you can give. That's what's dictating how you plan your day, how you live your life. But saying that's just part of me is so beautiful, and I have to just thank you again for creating this idea of like having this person or this figure that is your chronic condition, so that you can really say like I'm a whole person. There's so many different sides to me. My mastocytosis is just one of them. And as someone who has eczema, like chronic eczema, where it's constantly flaring, I don't know what's kind of going to happen the next day. I feel like I relate so much to that, and I just want to thank you because yeah, sometimes you just feel like sometimes you can just feel like, oh, I just can't do it today. But you do have that support network who's going to say, you're going to be fine. Just pull up your socks, and tomorrow's a different day. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.